Chapter 15 of the Boy Scouts in the Blue Ridge. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kenneth Sergeant Gaghan. Boy Scouts in the Blue Ridge by Herbert Carter. Chapter 15. The Flickering Torch Talk. "Put me out! Somebody give me a rub down the back! I'm on fire!" Nobody doubted Davy's excited words as he danced wildly about, stopping first at the smouldering spark on the right leg of his khaki trousers, and then furiously attacking another burning spot on the sleeve of his coat, only to throw his campaign hat down and jump on it, under the belief that it was threatened with immediate destruction. Some of the other scouts had managed to scramble to their feet about this time, and seeing that they were not in danger themselves, could afford to lend a hand in order to save the garments of the unlucky Jones boy. "Now your suit's a fine sight!" ejaculated Step hen. "Perfectly dreadful!" remarked Smithy, with a shudder; for to the mind of this member of the patrol, with his ideas of what neatness stood for, no punishment could have exceeded such a catastrophe as the one that had overtaken Davy. But after finding that his neck had not been dislocated by his fall, and that, while there were a few holes here and there about his clothes, they were still fairly presentable, Davy only grinned with his customary good nature. "You certainly sure are the limit," declared Bumpus, surveying the other with a frown on his rosy face. "Had to grow a tail and be done with it. Then you could take your monkey shines to the woods where they'd be appreciated." "Now that's what I call the unkindest cut of all," replied Davy. "I leave it to the crowd. If I wasn't only obeying orders, didn't you call out for me to come down? Well, didn't you? Huh! But you needn't split our fire that way," grumbled Bumpus, who was secretly just as amused over the affair as any of the rest. "When I say come down, you needn't think I meant for you to obey as fast as that. Reckon you must have tried some dodge that wasn't as easy as it looked, and lost your grip. Here's what did it for me," said Davy, stooping and picking up a piece of broken limb, which Thad remembered seeing fall at the same time the boy scattered the embers of the fire. "Rotten as a punk. But don't you believe for a minute because I was hanging head down right then, I struck that way? Easiest thing in the world to turn a flip-flop in the air. I sat down on that fire. That's why my pants got the worst of the burns. And say, do I limp when I walk because I'm feeling a little sore?" "Not much more than usual," remarked Bumpus, cheerfully. This ridiculous adventure on the part of Davy set them all to talking again. Of course, previous efforts in the same line, and carried out by the same orders, had to be hauled out of their concealment and made to do duty again, with sundry additions. For what story can there be but what is strengthened every time it is told? So many strange things were taking place all around them that it was little wonder the boys declared that they did not feel a bit sleepy, even when the patrol leader told them they ought to lie down and get some rest. "And when everything else fails," declared Step hen, "why, Davy here can always be counted on to furnish music for the band." "Yes, waltz music," added Giraffe. "Anyway, that's the way he thought he was giving us, the way he kicked around. Perhaps now he'd believe he was doing the turkey trot all by himself." But to all these taunts Davy made no response. Truth to tell, he seemed to be the sleepiest member of the set, and was seen to yawn numerous times. In this way he managed to start some of the others going, so that by degrees they were all exhibiting evidence of wanting to give up. Then there came the job of trying to make themselves fairly comfortable. They had considered this matter before, and settled upon plans for the campaign. There would be no cabin roof over their heads on this night, only the branches of the big tree. But since there seemed little likelihood of rain falling, they did not think they would miss it. It was the bed part that gave them the most trouble. They had scoured the immediate vicinity, and each scout had secured whatever he could lay his hands on in the shape of weeds or grass or even small branches from the tree. Anything to make the ground seem a bit softer to his body. One like this spot, while the other had entirely different ideas. But coached by Allan, who knew all about sleeping out without shelter, they one and all kept their feet toward the fire, because this was the first part affected by the cool night air. Several of them were already stretched out, for while they had arranged a system of sentry duties, Allan was the first to take the spell. He and Thad stood looking at the actions of the other scouts as they moved their crude beds here and there, striving to find spots where there were no roots sticking up that would poke into their sides or back. "Oh, they're a great bunch all told," remarked Allan, with a wide smile, as he saw Bumpus slyly stealing some of the bed of Step Hen, whose back was toward to him, adding it, handfuls at a time, to his own scanty bed. "Finest ever," added Thad. "I don't see how we could have improved on this patrol if we searched through Cranford with a fine-tooth comb. Every one of them has his failures, as just all of us do, but they're loyal and happy-go-lucky lot of boys as ever one apt to know. And Allan, I expect we'll have some glorious times ahead of us if we go up to Maine with you later on. This hasn't been fairly settled yet, you understand. The question of expense has yet to be met, as well as getting away from our school, if it takes up by the middle of September. But we're all hoping and pulling for it just as hard as we can." "Wouldn't it be great now," Allan went on to say, "if Bob does find that paper he thinks Reuben has been keeping all these years, when he hadn't ought to have let it stay unburned a minute? What do you suppose makes a smart scamp like that ever do such a silly thing?" "I couldn't tell you, only I've heard from my guardian say more than a few times that even the cleverest scoundrel is apt to make a blunder. I think it's true. Then I guess Reuben made his when he kept that paper." "Will you take a little stroll around with me before we lie down?" said Allan, who was having his first watch. "Might as well," returned the other, casting a glance over toward the patrol, still squirming more or less as they tried to make comfortable nests for themselves. "By that time, perhaps they'll be asleep, and I can drop off without having to listen to Bumpus complaining when Step Hen takes back his stolen goods. Come along then, Allan." They first of all walked back to the road in the direction of the strange little valley where Reuben lived, a halfway station between the haunts of the moonshiners and civilization. "What's that up yonder? Looks to me like a torch moving," remarked Thad, as he elevated his head, so as to gaze upward along the face of the mountain. "It is a torch, you're right," Allan went to say. "Somebody must be picking his way along those rocks. I think he sure needed a good light on such a black night as this." "But I guess you're wrong about that," Thad added. "See, he's waving his light, now back and again forth, just so many times. There, he gives a downward flash that must mean the end of a word, and then he goes on. Why, to be sure, it's as plain as anything that he's signaling to somebody on the other mountain. Thad, look there, and you can see another light move in answer to the first one." "Even that don't seem to be all," remarked the patrol leader seriously. "And here's a third light back of us, and upon my word I can see a fourth ever so far off. Looks like all the moonshiners in the mountains might be out in force, and having a jolly old talk among themselves. Wonder what they're fine to talk about," Allan hazarded. "Chances are 10 to 1 it's us they're discussing," said Thad. "Old Phin, like as not, is giving his orders, though he grinned a little when I was telling how scouts communicated with each other. Why, he knew all about that sly old rascal did, and this had been going on for years and years before Boy Scouts were ever heard of. Thad, they're all around us. We're surrounded by moonshiners with their handy guns, and if old Phin says we got to stay up here in the mountains, why, it's going to be a case of being marooned for us. We don't dare run, because they'd take that as a sure sign of guilt, and pepper us for sure on the way out. So there's nothing to be done but stick it out, it seems to me." "Well, we ought to be satisfied," remarked Thad, grimly. "Marooned or not, it was our intention to stay around here until Bob had settled those 2 matters of importance that fetched him down this way." "Sure, I'd pretty nigh forgot that," declared the Maine boy. "So let the mountain men shake their blessed old torches at each other all they choose, and tell how the trap is to be made snug as all get out. We'll just play the innocent, and try to find out what we want to know. Shall we go back to camp now, Thad?" "Just as you say," returned the other. "Nothing more to see out this way. We know that old Phin isn't ready to look on us as friends yet. He can't get over the suspicious sight of our khaki uniforms. woke things up in his soul. But so far we hadn't ought to complain about the way things have gone. Hope it'll keep on to the end, and that our Bob will get all he aims for his daddy, and to take the little girl cousin back to Cranford with him. And if it all goes to the good, say, perhaps we'll have a feather to stick in our hats, all right, Thad. We'll never get over talking about this thing, but it will go straight. That's the question." "Well, you can never tell," replied the other, softly. "Going to do our level best. Good night, Allan. Wake Giraffe at the end of an hour, and caution him to keep a good watch. I come next in line, you know." With these parting words, Thad stepped softly into camp, glanced at the various forms of the scouts stretched in favorite positions, some even lying on their backs, and then, with a smile, the patrol leader lay down on his crude bed he had made for himself. In 5 minutes he was asleep, and forgetful of all the strange events that had marked their strenuous hike into the mountains of the Old North State. End of chapter 15. Recording by Kenneth Sergeant Gaghan.